You're not really aware of your conscious thoughts.
I think that's part of what I see people really struggling with happiness.
I don't think any of us believe when it comes to deep happiness that you can fake it till you make it.
Is the goal to ultimately be happy?
If it's a goal, here are some ways to go about it.
I'm Dr. Laura Sidari, board-certified psychiatrist.
And I'm Dr. Tony Sidari, board-certified rheumatologist.
And welcome to our podcast, No Cure for This, giving you what to say for medicine and life when you have something you can't fix. And all you can do is cope, adapt, laugh, and keep showing up. We're here for the stuff that isn't a guideline. We'll talk about burnout, stress, relationships, and everything in between.
Although our work as physicians informs these discussions, this podcast is not for treatment purposes, and any descriptions of patient situations have been modified to protect confidentiality. For any direct medical advice or treatment needs, we recommend you seek the care of your healthcare provider.
Sounds like action matters. How do we sort of navigate impacts on well-being of solitude, sort of those sort of solitary activities versus those of action? What does the research show and your experience show related to the types of experiences and what has that quality with well-being?
That's a good question. It's a complicated one because there's people are different, and the amount of social activity different people need, different people find rewarding, varies from person to person. Same thing with respect to activities. Some people need more of it than others. It's pretty clear, we're a species that we have advanced not because of our brute strength, not because of any particular perceptual acuity. We don't have the vision of an eagle. We don't have the scent of your pet in your house, etc. But it's our intellect, and so we evolved to find it rewarding. It produces happiness to get out and explore. When we're out in the world learning new things, the mind reinforces that impulse. That's what led us to succeed. There's some fundamental findings in the happiness world. What are the things that you do that make you kind of happy? And if you randomly survey someone in the middle of a bunch of activities, you'll find that, watching television or scrolling on your phone, you're pretty happy at that moment. When you add it up over a day, if you've spent a lot of time watching TV, it's like spending a lot of time eating slice after slice of pizza. The first one feels really great, second one maybe, and after a while, and that's how you feel after watching lots of television or being on your phone the whole time. So coming back to that idea of touching grass, getting out, being active, touch grass is good for us.
Yeah, we find that challenge a lot with health and well-being. What can feel really good in the moment, that happiness in the moment that you're describing may not ultimately be good for us for overall well-being, purpose, and meaning.
Yeah, so that gets back to this distinction that goes as far back as the ancient Greeks between Hedonia, pleasure, moment-to-moment pleasure, and Eudaimonia, the sense of, am I doing this right? Is it worthwhile? Have I lived a good life? Good both in terms of pleasure, but good in terms of making a contribution, being a good person, being virtuous. Those things are rewarding. So different things are going to contribute more to one than the other. And the research suggests that attending to both of them matter. Being really high on Hedonia, that's great in the moment, but you can feel a little empty afterwards if that's all that you've done.
How do we reconcile that? Because in the moment, you can sort of be time blind, like I'm just experiencing this. It can make it harder to access those things that ultimately are going to be more important for our long-term well-being, but require that extra energy for action. I see that all the time with behavioral health work, where behavioral activation with cognitive behavioral therapy, the more pleasurable things that we do, as I know that you know, the more likely we are to engage in them, and it helps our mood. So how do we start that, especially if we're feeling stuck or we're feeling difficulties getting off that couch or stopping the scrolling, to be able to engage in those actions that ultimately are going to feed our soul more so than in the moment pleasures?
That's a good question. I think there's probably a menu of things that can help out there. We often talk about the problems introduced by modern technology, and you've got this distracting phone with you at all times. But it can also be an asset. That is, it can remind you to do certain things. So you could plug in, anytime I'm on here for 20 minutes, let me know that I've done that. You can put in reminders, get out, and now this is going to be a recurring joke, touch grass, or whatever. A lot of the things that the well-being researchers have done also can help attend to that. That is one of the most bankable activities one can do to advance well-being, is to keep a gratitude diary, to say the things that you're thankful for. And that does make us feel better about life. I don't know of a study that supports this, but I'd be willing to bet that when you do that and you feel grateful, it tilts you more in the direction of the eudaimonic well-being. I feel grateful for this. I need to do something to help someone else out. And it's remarkable. It didn't have to be this way, but doing good for other people is incredibly rewarding. In fact, there are studies on this where you get people to spend a certain amount of money on themselves or on someone else, and the people who've spent it on someone else at the end of that day are happier than the ones who were instructed to spend it on their own. And everybody can relate to this. If you've someone in front of you in line at the coffee shop is having trouble paying, and you say, "Oh, it's just a cappuccino, I'll pay it for you." You feel great for the rest of the day. You talk about it to your friends, talk about it on a podcast, and anytime you're reminded of that, you feel good. And again, it didn't have to be that way, but that
small
speaks
acts of
to
kindness approach, and
the fact that that's so rewarding.
Yes.
Is a nice feature of human psychology.
With that information you're sharing, how much do you think of happiness as like kind of what's nature? Sort of people are just programmed to be happier disposition versus this nurture, the acts of gratitude and the practice of gratitude.
John Haidt, who I talked about in the context of awe, in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, has a nice way of phrasing this, which is some people have won the cortical lottery and some people haven't. And so some people find it much easier we all know these people who just find it easy to be happy, and we know those people who find it more of a challenge. It's more of a challenge. It's not impossible. There are a variety of things that you can do. So the answer to your question, it is both of those things. It's just easier for some people than others. But a lot of the modern research on happiness prescribes a number of things that you can do if happiness is a challenge for you. Meditation seems to be very helpful. Getting out of nature, again, it's very helpful. Writing gratitude letters, and some of the antidepressive medications work quite well.
It's a multi-hit approach. It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
Some people, they need that boost to get up to be able to then overcome the barriers to inactivity. I think that's also an important thing to think about, too. Not all of us are dealt the same hand in life. So individuals who are facing serious health-related concerns, whether it's chronic physical or chronic mental illness, or maybe they've been dealt the bad cortical deck for being more tuned to pessimism or negativity. What are some strategies for people getting started who maybe it doesn't feel aligned with oneself, or there's concerns about things getting in the way that seem to be the focus.
Well, there are varieties. Let's take it. Let's jump from gratitude to something way far away that I like a lot. Oliver Burkeman's written a couple of happiness books. One is called 4,000 Weeks, which I guess is the number of weeks that we all have on this planet, which when you hear that number, it's like, that doesn't make me happy. That doesn't seem like a large number.
Doesn't help induce awe. Let's just say that.
Yeah. But paradoxically, in this last chapter, I think, is entitled Cosmic Insignificance Therapy. And this sounds like it would make you depressed, but it actually, for most of us, has the opposite effect, which is it's so easy to get obsessed with and disturbed by these minor things in life that really don't matter. And so the insignificance therapy is to recognize, look, you're only here for 4,000 weeks, and when you're gone, you know, your kids will remember you, maybe your grandkids. If you're Isaac Newton, you'll be remembered for everybody. There aren't many Isaac Newtons. It's all, you know, the current goes its way and you're forgotten. That sounds depressing as I describe it. But it turns out to be liberating. Why am I worried that my boss doesn't seem to like me as much as I think I should be liked? Or, oh, that person said that mean thing in traffic. Yeah. So what?
It puts things into perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, you had shared in your book about the wisest one in the room, related to individuals who have struggled with paraplegia. Could you share a little bit about what you observed with that and some of the different perspectives between those who are living with conditions versus how we might, as outsiders, perceive how they should be experiencing joy and life and fulfillment?
Yeah. That example, that is, if you ask anyone, what would your life be like if you lost the use of these things that you love being able to use, to be able to easily get out of bed yourself, walk around the room, get out, touch grass. How many times can we say that today? Oh, God, if I can't do that, it's just going to be terrible. And at first it is for me, in the going through the transition from an ambulatory person to a non-ambulatory person is just awful. And people who get through it, you just tip your hat to them. It's amazing. But it also testifies to one of the most miraculous parts of the human experience, which is we adapt to things. And so, yes, in the transition from where you were before to afterwards, it is awful, but you get used to it and you adapt. And when it comes to bad things like that, people who lose their job, it's terrible. But the human ability to overcome is amazing. Now, the flip side of that is when good things happen, this adaptation is a bit of a problem, that we often say that, oh, just if I get that promotion, I'll never sweat the small stuff again. And you mean it, and it's true for a little while, but pretty soon you're sweating the small stuff again. And so that example, what we think would be the case if we lost the use of our arms or legs, and what happens for most people, is partly a story about adaptation, and it's partly a story about the mind can only focus on a few things at a time, and so it seizes on the biggest thing, which is, I love being able to use my legs. What is it going to be like to not have it? You focus on that, and of course you think it's going to be terrible. But paraplegics aren't only paraplegics. Yes, there are many moments where they're having to deal with the difficulties of not being able to use their legs. But most moments aren't that way. They watch television the same way you do. They can write a gratitude note just like you can. They can be moved by music the same way you can. Their parents, their siblings, and all of those things. You don't focus on that. What is it like? What would it be like if I lost the use of my legs? You're going to focus on that. You're not going to focus on all of these other things. And that's an important lesson to have when you're trying to anticipate what are the choices I want to make. Don't simply focus on the one signature thing of that, oh, if I take this job, I'll make this amount more money. That's great. More money's better than less money. But in order to get that more money, what do you have to do? Focus on all of those things.
Yeah. It sounds like happiness is not just one thing. It's not a destination. It's not an emotion. It's also not just one type of experience you're describing in the moment, and then also broader. How do we, with the vastness, like kind of with awe, how do we make sense of what it means to live well and be in the pursuit or in the experience of happiness?
Life is a big menu, and there are many things you can pick from. And some days you're going to want to pick some things, and other days others.
With the different elements of happiness. So, some people are looking for novelty and sort of like ingenuity and adventure, and others are finding, like we see with old age, part of the satisfaction that comes. I'm solidly middle-aged, so I'm right between the two, is that enjoyment in maybe things that are more calm and serenity, sort of thinking about Eastern versus Western cultures too, in terms of what gives happiness. So how do we choose, Do we have that quiet night in with a smaller group, or do we go to that concert? How do we navigate these decisions when it comes to choosing happiness at each stage of life?
Do something every day that counts. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean, counts? Well, something you decide what counts. And for some day, counting is, I was out there doing something physically challenging myself, and that felt great. And if you ask me to do that every day, that might feel good too, but they're diminishing returns. And other days, what's going to count needs to be something else. And you're the best decision maker for that. But it's so easy to just go through days not attentive to that. So the reason I like this exercise is there are a whole bunch of different things that count, but as long as you're attentive to them, you won't have that feeling like, oh, what a wasted day this was, or wow, a whole week went by and I haven't done anything.
It sounds like it's better to try and fail than not try at all.
Yeah, well, you used earlier the idea that life is not a destination, it's a journey, and that's one of the wisest ones, because it is true. We're, again, we evolved to operate on the world, and therefore when we are being active, striving for things, we tend to be happiest.
Yeah, so Tom, with happiness, is the goal to ultimately be happy, like to find that we have reached this state of happiness?
Well, two things to say about that. Is the goal to that every person has to decide for themselves what the goals are they want to strive for. Much of our conversation has been presupposing that, you want to increase your happiness. That doesn't mean that it needs to be the goal. But if it's a goal, here are some ways to go about it. So that's one thing. No, it's not the goal. There are other things that one can attend to. If you're obsessed with your own happiness, you aren't contributing to the world. That can make the eudaimonic form of well-being harder to achieve. But the second reason I like your question is that there's almost a paradox here, that when you consciously try to achieve happiness, it can make it hard. It's often when you get lost in things that you're the happiest. You're at a concert and you just absorbed in the music, that's when you're happy. If you stop to ask, is this great? Am I happy now? Often it interferes with things. There's this famous work on the flow state that when, mountain climbers, very challenging or absorbed in a chess match, you're not aware of the passing of time. You're not really aware of your conscious thoughts. You're just in this zone. People find that thrilling. And that speaks to this idea that the conscious pursuit of happiness can undercut the whole enterprise of being happy.
There's definitely a part of authenticity. So we think about like kind of horror films and somebody with a creepy smile that's totally incongruent with the situation. I think that's part of what I see people really struggling with happiness, especially if it seems incongruent with oneself, or let's say you've experienced a terrible life event or a terrible loss, and now it's discounting the reality of what one has lost or experienced. So that depth of emotion, the idea of like kind of the unity of opposites, we don't understand happiness if we don't also have sadness, I think sometimes gets lost in the mix, just as somebody who's caring for individuals who are dealing with all sorts of different emotions, and then also myself navigating as a fellow traveler, the pursuit of happiness, aligned with oneself.
Yeah, there's this phrase that's used a lot, fake it till you make it. And it's true in lots of ways. Even in the happy realm, put on a happy face makes you a little happier. But I don't think any of us believe when it comes to deep happiness that you can fake it till you make it. You've got to really make it in some ways. And that's a lot of what the field is all about. What are those paths to doing it?
Yeah, there's like a realistic optimism, or there's sort of this idea that it needs to still be aligned with oneself. The fake it till you make it, if it's incongruent or invalidating to how we see ourselves, it can cause problems too.
Yep. And it can seem sad to us if we see someone who feels compelled to present as happier than they really are.
What are the things that money can't buy that research shows has a huge impact on happiness?
Well, that's hard to answer because some things, you can't put a price tag on them, but money can indirectly influence them. So having, again, going back to this fallback position, which just is a lot of truth to it, that we are socially embedded through and through. So, the kind of, storybook, monogamous kind of one-on-one lifetime relationship, money can't buy that. But it's super powerful in terms of one's both eudaimonic and hedonic happiness.
You shared about experiences, and I think each generation will say, well, we had it better in the good old days, or back, this was the time of my life. This was the best generation or the best time. How do the way that we reflect on our experiences have an impact on how we experience happiness in the here and now?
Yeah, the idea that those were the good old days, that gets back to where we started talking about some fundamental mechanics of judgment. When you're thinking about comparing now with the good old days, you're comparing, all right, what's now like? And you're in the now, and so you have access to everything. And so were movies or music better back then versus now? Let me think about the music now. Oh, I'm driving in my car and I just had to change from that station because that was horrible, then to this station, and finally found a good tune. So you're aware of the good and the bad. When you think about music back then, you're not playing the radio, you're just thinking, what was then? And you're going to think of the best because those are the most memorable. So comparing the mixture now with the great stuff then it's a route in favor of the then, even if the then was no good. Same thing with movies and all sorts of things like that. And there is research showing that every generation thinks that the time before was better, and oh, gee, I wish I could have been born then. And the fact that that's true of all generations means, of course, it can't be true.
How can we, in a healthy way, integrate those past experiences where we are, let's say, taking from those experiences things that can help us in finding happiness now, but it's also not getting in the way of us enjoying what this current stage has to offer?
I think I might be the worst person in the world to answer that question, because I personally enjoy the emotion of nostalgia that is both pleasurable and painful at the same time. The Czech writer Milan Kundera refers to nostalgia as pain over the impossibility of return. So there's this thing that you enjoyed as a kid. You want to experience it, but it's impossible. And so you're enjoying that thing, but also feeling the pain of not ever being able to experience it again. And that complex emotion, for some reason, I find really interesting.
Yeah, I love nostalgia too. Where we're sitting, so these chairs are my grandparents' chairs. And so I've had so many conversations with my grandfather and my grandmother in these chairs, yet here we are now having a conversation. So I think that idea of we integrate that nostalgia in a way that's relevant to where we are here and now, as opposed to looking at, was it better, was it worse?
Yeah.
It's more of just making sure we keep it present as part of our story moving forward too.
Yep. And the fact that it was your grandparents lends it some, you used the term authenticity before. It's if there is such a thing as authentic furniture, that captures it as well as anything.
Not that we're investing in possessions, but when the possessions have experiences too, I think we can get the 2 for 1.
Absolutely. And I just, the claim is invest more in experiences. It's not like you can never, or you should never invest in material goods. You don't have to live the life of a hermit, religious ascetic or anything. It's just tilt a little more in the experiential realm and it'll pay off.
With hierarchy of needs, with Maslow's
Yes.
hierarchy of needs, we still need to get our basic needs met to be able to enjoy, higher orders of experiences. So having a place to eat and basic, shelter, and having food and warmth, those are, of course, things that are really important. And I think what you're sharing is it's important to also look at when we have those things, how it compares. Incrementally getting more possessions is not going to have the same effect as experiences.
No, that's a great insight. I think the implicit or explicit recommendation on the experience possessions should be thought about in the context of Maslow. That's perfect.
Yeah. With an experience, so, let's say I want to go with my husband on a vacation.
Uh-huh.
What would be most important for us to do? Would it be to go for a long vacation and pack it full of lots of activities? If we have only this amount of money to spend, how should we spend it? What would be your recommendations if you want to really sort of get the max out of happiness and enjoyment out of an experience?
Yeah, well, it depends on how much you care about the in-the-moment experience versus how are you going to reflect on it. And if you want to maximize your Hedonia, moment-to-moment experience, then a longer vacation's great. You have more of those moments. But when you look back, how long it was just doesn't matter much at all. I mentioned the Czech writer Milan Kundera earlier. He has this phrase that memory doesn't make movies or films, he probably said, doesn't make films, it makes snapshots. So when you look back on an experience you had, it's going to be these isolated moments, suggesting that how long it lasted doesn't really matter very much. And if that's true, if you're planning a vacation, and as you said, if you have limited resources, which is true for almost all of us,
Yes.
then you face the dilemma. Do I want a vacation for 2 weeks and stay in a more modest place, or do I want to go for a week and stay at a better place? If you're concerned about your store of experiences in your head, then it's a route that you want to go for the shorter experience. And so what the research shows is that you remember what something was like as its peak. So we're trying to make these positive experiences. What's going to stand out is the best time and what it was like at the very end. So don't worry about how long it is. Make sure you put something in there that's special. And if you can, make that special thing on the last day. I'm not sure that everyone pays attention to the last thing. We often, and this is a good thing, we go on vacation, we feel it's a privilege. So I got to buy some gifts for people back home. Great. I'm not saying not to do that. But we often leave it to the last moment. So the last day you're running around at a shopping mall that is not unlike the shopping mall at home to buy gifts for people back home. Don't do that. Do it right at the beginning. Save something special for the last day.
With that, we'll end on a high note. So yes, when we're trying to optimize our happiness, we need to look for those peaks, those high moments, and make sure we're paying attention to the ending, packing in the most enjoyable parts that we can. And happiness, although it sounds like we've got many dimensions to it, it's really important to understand is a dynamic and experiential process that's highly social as we're working together to find well-being and satisfaction.
Very well said. Yes, exactly.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Really, my pleasure.
If you enjoyed being part of this conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and give us a follow. If you have any questions, topics for future episodes, or a no-cure moment of your own, be sure to leave them in the comments. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.